Welcome back.
Welcome back, family, to Hear Us Out. I'm Renee.
I'm Curry.
And once again, as always, thank you so much to our long-time subscribers who have been with us since the very beginning. And for those who have come along, found us, make sure to hit subscribe so that you can continue to get notifications to Hear Us Out.
Yeah, and thank you. And on this episode, we shall be continuing
Mm-hmm.
our reading of the Republic,
Yep.
our discussion of the Republic. And we are on to book two.
Yes.
All right, in our first episode on the Republic, the question was, what is
Right.
justice?
Mm-hmm.
And he has a brief review. Socrates was at a get together, a big
Yeah, it's a
but
get
no one
together.
yet.
Yeah,
It
you can say
wasn't
that.
necessarily a party.
No.
Yeah, it was more of like
Yeah,
like a
just a get together. Just,
yeah,
yeah.
with a bunch of well-connected gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
and they ended up discussing the topic of justice.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, Socrates was asking, what is justice?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to define justice, and everybody had their own opinions, which Socrates debated against to some level. And then there was Thrasymachus,
Mm-hmm.
who
Our
had
favorite
his
friend.
yeah, who had his own opinions about justice, saying
Uh-huh.
that justice is merely for the strong, it is force, and
Mm-hmm.
what is actually justice is you know justice is injustice, so that
Mm-hmm.
justice isn't as useful
Yeah,
in it,
that's right.
as injustice, and injustice is more profitable, and injustice is better. And then Socrates went on a whole tangent,
Mm-hmm.
debating that thing. And at the end of the that particular chapter, that particular book,
Right.
because that's how they're broken up,
Mm-hmm.
he says that he was able to counter Thrasymachus's arguments,
Yeah, but
but he
he's
was never able
able
to
to give a
actually define
fine. Mm-hmm.
justice. And that's what we ended up doing,
Mm-hmm.
coming up with our own definitions for justice, you know, and that is relevant because here in book two, the conversation about
Right. It
justice
sort of continues. Mm-hmm.
continues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thrasymachus has left. But who's left behind? There are two gentlemen in particular in this book
Book. Mm-hmm.
that Socrates is
Conversing with.
conversing with.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say debating, but it really
Right.
isn't.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
It
But yeah,
wasn't really, a debate.
right. Mm-hmm.
There is Glaucon and his little brother Adeimantus.
Right. That's a good way to pronounce it.
Yeah, I always have a hard time with these
Yeah, the
Greek
Greek
names.
names.
But these two, they agree, or they want to
Agree.
agree
Right.
with Socrates
Mm-hmm.
about justice and justice being more profitable and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. But they didn't feel that his arguments against Thrasymachus were enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have their own counter arguments.
Mm-hmm.
And really they're just begging Socrates to adequately
Yeah.
put into
Right.
words exactly why justice is better than
Justice.
injustice
Mm-hmm.
and what justice is.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's where we begin with
Mm-hmm.
book two,
Mm-hmm.
where we start with Glaucon.
Mm-hmm.
It's Glaucon.
Right.
So
I say Glaucon.
Glaucon.
Right.
Glaucon. It begins with him,
uh,
and he pretty much tells Socrates that uh, what you said to Thrasymachus was not enough,
mm-hmm.
because, like you said, Glaucon wants him to. He wants him to be able to better adequately
Mm-hmm.
describe justice and
He
say
wants it
exactly
right.
why.
He wants a much more concrete and definitive answer to, well, what is justice?
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and primarily why is it better than
Then
injustice
justice, mm-hmm. or
and
being unjust.
being unjust?
Yeah,
Yes,
more so. Right.
and so Glaucon's entire counter argument kind of rests on this idea that injustice is shown to be unequivocally
Mm-hmm.
better than justice in terms of being able to make a living for oneself,
Mm-hmm.
being able to make a wage for oneself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that if you were to give someone the reputation
Mm-hmm.
of a just person,
Mm-hmm.
he's known as an unjust, but he's actually unjust,
Mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to a just person
Mm-hmm.
who has the reputation of being unjust, right? The just person, will be hounded. The just person will be excommunicated from society and you know killed and all this stuff
Mm-hmm.
because of his very bad reputation. But he is too just to actively combat that reputation that he has of himself,
Mm-hmm.
because the ideas of being argumentative, of being fair, of being all these things is not very good at combating this perception of
Mm-hmm.
oneself.
Right. And so that's when I
Because
sort of raised the question that, well, when has just
mm-hmm,
or justice been better than, you know, unjust or injustice?
mm-hmm,
And so many times, we see, and I told you yesterday, I say it always feels as if, you know, those who are unjust are slightly ahead of the game. They are the ones who tend to get the praise, the glory. These are the people who we tend to even look up to, and those who we deem to be just or upright, you know, people. They tend to fall to the wayside. Like you say, I mean, they're the ones who get killed,
mm-hmm,
standing up doing what we think is just and standing up for the injustice. So I think that was one of the things that
yeah,
that Glaucon, really wanted, Socrates to hammer out. Well,
because and he said, like, as opposed to the person who is unjust
mm-hmm,
but with a reputation of being just,
mm-hmm,
that person is going to get all the opportunities. He's going to get all the praise and
mm-hmm,
all that. But he has, the but he's unjust enough, in that
mm-hmm,
he is able to skew the game so far in his favor that he's going to be able to better capitalize on those
mm-hmm,
opportunities. You know, so is justice really useful, or is just appearing to be just?
mm-hmm,
Is that more useful? And he also, and Glaucon also has this little antidote
mm-hmm,
about, he talks about
mm-hmm.
a shepherd who a fissure opens outside of his home, and and said, oh, well, I could just read the thing to you,
Yeah,
but it's, it's,
yeah.
it's, a, it's a little thing here, right? And let me see. Here we go.
Mm-hmm,
I'm just trying to figure out where I want to
mm-hmm.
start. It's like a wall of text.
Right.
It was a whole wall of
Yeah.
text. So I'm just trying to figure out the
It's-
best place to start here.
right.
So yes, all right. This license I speak of would be very much the same as the power which Gygas had, the ancestor of Gygas the Lydian. They say he was a shepherd serving the then ruler of Lydia. A great storm came, and an earthquake, and there was a split in the earth, and a chasm opened in the place where he kept his flocks. He saw it, and wandered, and went down. There he was, many wonderful things which the story tells, and in particular a brazen horse, hollow, with windows in the side. He peeped in and saw a dead body, and it appeared larger than human, with nothing on but a golden ring on the hand, which he took off and came out again. It was the custom among the shepherds to hold a monthly meeting, and then report to the king all about the flocks. This meeting he attended wearing the ring. As he sat with the others, he happened to turn the collet of the ring round towards himself to the inside of his hand. As soon as this was done, he became invisible to the company, and they spoke of him as if he had left the place. He was surprised, and fingered the ring again, turning the collet outward, and when he turned it, he became visible. Noticing that, he made trial of the ring to see if it had that power, and he found that when he turned the collet inside, he was invisible. He turned it outside, visible. After he found this out, he managed to be appointed one of the messengers to the king. When he got there, he seduced the king's wife, and with her set upon the king, and killed him, and seized the empire. Then if there could be two such rings, and if the just man put on one and the unjust the other, no one, as it would be thought, would be so adamantine as to abide in the practice of justice. No one could endure to hold back from another's good, and not to touch when it was in his power to take what he would take to go. Wait, I'm sorry. What we do? Oh, let me just start the sentence again. No one could endure to hold back from another's goods and not to touch when it was in his power to take what he would even out of the market without fear, and to go into any house and lie with anyone he wished, and to kill or set free from prison those he might wish, and to do anything else in the world like a very god. And in doing so, he would do just the same as the other. Both would go the same way. Surely one would call this a strong proof that no one is just willingly, but only under compulsion, believing that it is not a good to him personally, since wherever each thinks he will be able to do injustice, he does injustice. There is more personal profit, as everyone clearly believes, from injustice than from justice, and he is right in his belief. And those who give this account of the matter, since if anyone had this license, and yet would do no injustice or touch other men's property, he would be thought a miserable fool by any who perceived it. But they would praise him to each other, deceiving each other for fear of suffering injustice themselves. So much then for that. So yeah, he kind of Glaucon creates this antidote about the person who's able to turn invisible, and with this power, Gygus takes over the kingdom and does everything that he wants to do. Right, and he says, now if you give this ring to a just man and an unjust man, right, they'll both do whatever they want to do with that power. They're both going to use that power for their own personal good, right? And if the so that's enough to show just how frail just and injustice is. That you're only being just because you want to be perceived as good, right? But if you were given the power to do anything that you wanted, you would do anything that you wanted, regardless of what anyone believed of you, and you would be right to do so, like he says, right? If the just and unjust person were to go in that situation, obviously the unjust person will be able to make more of that situation because it is we all know that just being unjust is better at making a profit, right? So if a person were to be given that power and wouldn't use it to further their own beliefs, everybody would think that person's an idiot.
Right.
The person's an idiot. Whereas, but they will say that he's just. They will praise him for being just, but they will believe him to be a fool because he didn't use that power. Right? Whereas the unjust person will be able to make a profit and all that, and also be praised for his ingenuity and for being able to use the power that was given to him. So obviously, it at least how Glaucon sets it up, justice it pales in comparison to being unjust, because justice is nothing more than an appearance.
Yeah, I'm about to say it's a perception,
an
an image, an aesthetic.
Whereas being unjust is practical, is profitable. And he gives that whole soliloquy about that, the whole anecdote about that, and I like I said, I find that interesting because that whole question, I'm sure we're not the only ones to pose that question to ourselves on many of occasions. Especially like we have a lot of problems with our world, and we often think, man, if I had the power,
if
to
I
just
had
do what I wanted to do,
I always say I'm like, boy, if I had the money to match my courage, the things that I would do. And then I look at, the Bezos of the world, right? I mean, the things that they could do, but instead, they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and I often have this. I do this thought experiment, right? Where I say, like, if I could snap my fingers and just make the world what I want it to be, and just make it everything that I want it to be and what I need it to be, for me to be okay with it, right? If I could just snap my fingers, and I know that when I do that, I'm going to get everything that I want,
Mm-hmm.
right? The world's going to be exactly what I want it to be. Could I snap my fingers?
Mm-hmm.
Could I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Would I do it? You know, and the way at least the way I think about it, the
Mm-hmm.
way it's always supposed how I've always been able to dissect that thing is that
Mm-hmm.
because I've never looked at it in terms of profit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've always looked at it in terms of right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm not claiming any type of moral superiority over
Mm-hmm.
Glaucon or anyone. I'm just saying
Okay.
the terms in which I've dissected the
Mm-hmm.
issue of power.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is what this is. It's pretty much
Yeah.
saying that absolute power corrupts
Absolutely.
absolutely,
Right.
right?
And that for the most part, the only time that people are quote unquote just is because they don't have the power to be unjust.
Yeah, and then and
You
that's
know,
why
that
the
they,
absolute
right,
power
that they're
corrupts.
only good by default,
Yeah, that
you know.
absolute power corrupts absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
and justly so.
Mm-hmm.
That you should be quote unquote corrupted
Mm-hmm.
by power, because that corruption allows you to best take advantage of your power,
Yeah.
of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think, if I had that power, would I use it?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the answer is always no.
Mm-hmm.
Because how I see it is that if I snap my fingers
Mm-hmm.
and I make the world what I want it to be, then it's not really what I want it to be,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not real. What I really want is, like I said, I want to be right. I
Mm-hmm.
want people, to move in that
Right.
direction, and
Right.
for
To move.
people to
Mm-hmm.
change and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. To be those types of, to people to
Right.
make that,
Mm-hmm.
not because I snap my fingers, but because we chose to be those people.
Mm-hmm.
If I snap my fingers, then it's nothing more than, like I say, it's tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
It's me making that choice for the entire world,
Right.
and inflicting my own worldviews onto onto everyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I always say that I know that I'm not a tyrant. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
make the world and try to recreate as an edifice to my glory and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. But it'll just be a gilded cage.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a dream. It won't be real, because it
Mm-hmm.
won't be us actually doing it. It'll
Right.
be me using fantasy power
Mm-hmm.
to do this
To
thing,
get you right.
to get to this
Mm-hmm.
point. Now, that's what I always think about, even like in terms of if I had overwhelming wealth, or if I
Mm-hmm.
were a genius super hacker and some stuff like that, just to know all the secrets and all
Right.
that stuff. It's like all of that is pointless to
Right.
me. It's secondary to us being the type of people that we need to be, you know, to actually, take advantage of that. But as Glaucon said, that being able to take advantage of that requires a bit of uh of unjustness,
Mm-hmm.
injustice,
Injustice. Right.
corruption, as we
Mm-hmm.
in the absolute power
Mm-hmm.
metric. You know, and to that metric, I think he's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's right, because there was there's this book that I read. It's called the Illuminatus trilogy, right? I'm not gonna really get into what it's all about, but
Yeah.
it's pretty much about this. There's a global conspiracy. It gets nuts,
Right.
and this guy is basically trying to, save the world,
Right.
right, from this
Right.
giant global
The conspiracy.
conspiracy,
Right.
right? And it's like very irreverent. Like it was like you can tell when it was written,
Mm-hmm.
very irreverent, very psychedelic and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, the person who was trying to save the world was like, I ended up doing all the things that people would do to damn the world. I
Mm-hmm.
lied, I cheated, I manipulated situations, I killed people and all this stuff. I did all of that trying to save the world,
Mm-hmm.
trying to build peace.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't. I saved the world, right? I stopped the conspiracy. I did
Mm-hmm.
all this. Well, I stopped the conspiracy, but I didn't save the world.
Right.
I didn't change anything,
Mm-hmm.
because I had access to all these secrets. I had
Mm-hmm.
access to all this technology, to all this stuff, and I used it. I used it all. And it stopped the conspiracy. It stopped,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't save
Save
anything. It
anything.
didn't
Right.
change
Mm-hmm.
anything. And that's now, when I It was reading that why I arrived to the to this idea that you can't build peace,
Mm-hmm.
because building in this metric in and of itself
Mm-hmm.
entails corruption.
Yeah.
That you have to change the entire dynamic in which this is existing in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to change the entire dynamic of what it means to build. That's
Mm-hmm.
why, like I said, it's not about me leading anyone or me
Mm-hmm.
being led by anyone. It's about us coming together and actually changing, how we live together,
Mm-hmm.
how we decide to go about being
Yeah.
in a society. And you know, that is the opposite, I would say, of absolute power,
Mm-hmm.
you know, corrupting absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I say, Glaucon's right. If we were to try to build something else, the way things are built now,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, it will entail a measure of injustice.
Mm-hmm.
It will entail a measure of corruption. It will entail lying and manipulating, you know, and trying to force a particular perspective and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And but this idea that it should
Right.
corrupt,
Mm-hmm.
that power should corrupt, that if you are given this power, you should use it to further your own ends. You must,
Mm-hmm.
right? The way he even talks
Right.
about it, you must. You would
Right.
be foolish
Not
not
to.
to, you know. And I think that goes to highlight a fundamental misunderstanding
Mm-hmm.
of what justice is and how it's meant to be applied.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we're going to see as
We continue to have
this
our
book,
discussions and
yeah,
read. Mm-hmm.
continues to go on. But let's keep that in mind about the power and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because his brother breaks in, Edemontis breaks in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the one who says that Glaucon hasn't gone far enough.
Enough. Right. That's
He
right.
hasn't gone far enough,
Enough. Right.
and he takes it even further, because I think he's the one who talks about the fact that being just is merely just being perceived as just.
Right. So what has the just man gotten
Hmm.
but injustice to happen to him?
Yeah,
That's pretty much the tenor of what the brother is
yeah, because all
discusses.
he ends up saying is that who's in a better
Yeah.
position to be just,
Just
the rich man or the
or
poor
poor
man?
man. Mm-hmm.
The rich man, obviously, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody always goes to the rich man.
Right.
The clergyman goes to the rich man,
Mm-hmm.
promising to bring destruction on the enemies and
Mm-hmm.
favor on the house by being able to pray and
Mm-hmm.
manipulate the gods themselves.
Mm-hmm.
All these people go to these people who seem just, but
Mm-hmm.
have to be unjust, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how they were able to accrue
Through
such
job,
wealth,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? Because I said it entails a level of injustice,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these are unjust men,
Mm-hmm.
but who seem just, who have the aesthetic of being just, right? And even though we know that you know they aren't as just as they appear to be, these are the men that are idolized in our society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These are the people that others try to emulate, that people try
Yeah.
to become.
Yeah. Who
So,
we want to become the Warren Buffetts,
mhm,
right? The Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos and all the billionaires. That's who we want to be. That's who we aspire to be.
mhm,
You want to become the next billionaire. Well, we know what that entails. You want to become like the next rich elite, whatever. We
mhm,
know what all of that entails. Even if you mask it or you try to pretend, well, this is just how things are and this is what you have to do, and you can cloak it as, you know, financial independence or however you want to frame it.
mhm,
There are some people, well, not some, there are a whole bunch of people that you are going to have to screw over to get to that point, to get there. And when you get there, we already know if that's what you've done to get there, then we know what you'll do to maintain it.
mhm.
He'll lie and steal, he'll do whatever. I mean,
That's what it
that's
entails.
that's what it entails. But that
That's what it means to build
right.
in this society.
Mm-hmm. And we have folk who are passing it off as some scheme and financial classes or whatever it is. Just look, I'm not telling you to starve, but I'm also not saying that this is not this is unsustainable. I mean, unless you think that millions of lives are worth having you know the billions or whatever, then
But yeah,
yeah.
so they both make these, arguments, these very elegant
Mm-hmm.
arguments, and Socrates is very, very impressed
Yeah.
because this is much different than
Yeah.
Thrasymachus, who's just, being very confrontational, just throwing
Right.
all this stuff out there.
Because you can't. Because when I ask you the question, you can't answer it the
You
way
know,
that.
the way that
Right.
the way that you would. You got to
Right.
answer it another way, like all that type of stuff. But Socrates is very impressed,
Uh,
and he and Glaucon and his brother at the I have such a hard time with his name. Edemontus at the
good job. Good job.
it's Adeimantos.
And Nemontius.
Adamantus. Yeah, his
Right.
name. Oh boy, that's what we call him when we talk about oh boy. But yeah, and they both give their impassioned pleas, and
Uh-huh.
Socrates is very impressed, and they both press Socrates to please.
Mm-hmm.
They beg him,
Uh-huh.
please, please,
Right.
please give us a defense of justice. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what Socrates does because he's kind of drawing a blank because they've made very eloquent,
Good. Oh,
persuasive
yeah.
arguments
Mm-hmm.
about the usefulness of injustice over
Right.
justice.
Mm-hmm.
So Socrates says, the search we undertake is no small matter, but one that needs a sharp eye, as it seems to me. Well, then, since we are not clever, I think, said I, that we should make the following kind of search for our object. Suppose we had been told by someone to read an inscription in small letters, a good way off, and we had not very sharp sight, and then someone noticed the same inscription somewhere else in larger letters on a larger tablet. That would be a great piece of luck, I think. We could read the large ones first and then examine the smaller to see if they were the same. That's true enough, said Adeimantus. But what do you see like in the search about justice? I'll tell you, said I. There is justice of one man, we say, and justice of a whole city, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly. Well, a city is larger than one man. Well, of course it is, he said. Then perhaps there would be a larger justice in the city and easier to understand. If you like, then let us inquire first what it is in the cities. Then we will examine it in the single man, looking for the likeness of the larger in the shape of the smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Socrates. So this is where we start to get into, you know, the republic as we
Yeah.
know it,
Right.
right? What a city should be, what
Mm-hmm.
rulers are supposed to be, what people are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
All of this it started in the pursuit of trying to understand justice.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can understand what a just society is, then perhaps we can understand
Same
what
with
a
each other.
just person
Mm-hmm.
is, right? And why it's better than
Yeah.
the inverse,
Right.
right? So he's pretty much saying that we're going to take it from the micro
Right.
and we're going to put it on the macro,
Macro. Mm-hmm.
right? And we're going to try to extrapolate from there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is not a bad idea, since being able to pin down the usefulness of justice on the individual level seems to be very elusive,
Yeah.
right? So they start, thinking about a city,
Mm-hmm.
right? They start saying that, well, okay, what if a bunch of like-minded
Mm-hmm.
individuals decided to provide like for each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have, your farmers, your shepherds,
Right. And
your carpenters, and
right.
all these people,
Shoemakers,
your
whatever. Right.
shoemakers.
Mm-hmm.
They all come together and they all start providing for one another,
Mm-hmm.
and they all start, you know, uh, doing,
Right.
for like creating a city,
Right.
creating a habitat where
Mm-hmm.
everybody
Where
is
everybody
able,
can. Everyone's
share
working.
and
Yeah.
do all the
Sharing,
stuff, working
cooperate.
together, all that
Mm-hmm.
good stuff.
Right.
And this is where, like, this is where, like,
We both are like, see,
mhm,
see you. All right.
like we've said many times,
Right.
like there's
See,
a
flaw. Yeah.
fundamental
Uh huh. Stand a
misunderstanding
flaw here. Uh huh.
of what justice
Mm-hmm.
is and what society is. Like if you, because when we read the first book, we had we there was still like points even in Socrates' defenses where we were like, you seem to be missing
Missing.
something here. And the point that we came to was that just like I said, he wasn't able to define justice,
Right.
but we did. We said on the macro and micro levels that justice is doing your best. And sometimes what is right isn't always what's best, right? But that doesn't make being wrong right. It just means that you had to do your best in whatever situation. Sometimes all you have are bad choices,
Right?
Or sometimes
That's right.
you
have
know,
to still
but
make
you
a
still
choice.
have to choose. But justice is about doing your best in those situations, whether you're on the micro or on the macro level, right? That's how we were able to define justice, right? And now him, Socrates, creating
His little city, right?
City to start experiment for him and his contemporaries, right? I think, like I say, you start to see the fundamental misunderstanding here. That's just a quick little part right there. Because, all right, let me just read.
Yeah, just read. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me see. Where should I start? Then, then they must make a home, not merely enough for themselves, but enough for those people of whom they have need, and such things as those same people need. So they must. More farmers then, and more other craftsmen will be necessary for our city. Yes, indeed. And more of the other assistants, I suppose, to export and import the various things. These are traders, aren't they? Yes, they are. So we shall want traders too, certainly. And if the traders goes by sea, many others will be wanted, besides who will understand commerce overseas. Many others indeed. Now in the city itself, how will they exchange the things which each class makes? For that is the reason why we founded the city as a partnership. By selling and buying, he said, that is clear, surely. We shall have a market then, as a result of this, and coinage as a token of the exchange, by all means. He's kind of talking with the brothers going back and forth. But that part right there, I think highlights one of the, if you want to know where injustice
comes in,
comes from,
right there,
you just take that out and see.
Right.
Like I said, I wrote down, I say, you go from cooperation equates to profit to profiting from cooperation. Right? Instead
you had no middleman.
You had no middleman.
Right.
You had none of that stuff. All you had people working together, like-minded individuals working together, in the creation and maintenance of this city, of this society, of this thing, right? And so, um, you, there was no need for
coinage.
There was no need for these things. That's right. But instead, as I said, your cooperation was the profit. That was the gain. That's right. You all working together. But now you created a system where now you can profit from the cooperation. Right? You separated the two. Right. And made profiting into coinage. Right? And now you created this like this leech, this middleman that siphons, profit from cooperation instead of the two being equated as one.
Right. You had everything working. You had your city. I mean, you had everything that you even needed. But once you introduce money, I guess you could say, once that's introduced, well, that's where the injustice comes into play.
The entire thing.
Yeah, it changes.
That, you flipped it on its head. So you went from, you literally went from cooperating, equating to profit, to like people working together, for like goals of just creating and maintaining a city where they can all live together. Right. You went from that to, like I said, profiting from the cooperation, to creating a metric in which you can personally find gain from the work and cooperation of others. This is where it begins. Right. And the fact that it was said so laissez-faire, of course, of course you have to take this step. Of course, they have to do this. you see, you seem to like to not to have like a fundamental misunderstanding of
Mm-hmm.
how these things are meant to apply,
Mm-hmm.
or how you apply,
Mm-hmm.
these things, or where justice and injustice comes from.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. It was
Like
you put it in there. It was right
you
there.
see it started
Uh-huh.
already. If you've like way before you said that injustice was better at being able to make a profit, being able
Mm-hmm.
to make a wage,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you introduce a system of profit outside
Right.
of cooperating,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well,
But
there you go.
but there you go.
There
Right.
you go. There's the injustice.
Mm-hmm.
There's the injustice. But yeah, they continue. They keep
Right.
going,
Mm-hmm.
creating that city, right? And I asked this question.
Time to get to the land. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And I asked this question, like,
Mm-hmm.
what is the point of a city?
Mm-hmm.
Because once again, like you said, there's this the our you can see these two differing
Mm-hmm.
ideals. You know that as a city being used as a metric for profit and
Yeah.
gain,
Uh-huh.
right? Whereas the way we define it is that the gain in and of itself is the city,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, I'll ask you, what is the point of a city or society in
Well,
general?
I had mentioned, cooperation, camaraderie, security, working together. That's what I had mentioned. So that when all of those things are working together, you know, you're helping, you know, one another.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I, had defined and looked at as
Mm-hmm.
a city, as, you know, versus working in, I'm gonna say in isolation,
Yeah.
which would be like in your rural areas or whatever. You work more in isolation, so you know you have to do everything. You're more of a jack of a trade. You're by yourself, those type of things. But when you come together, you're able to use your, I'll say your best skills to enhance everyone
Mm-hmm.
else and you're close by, those type of things. So that's why I had mentioned the camaraderie, cooperation, and a level of safety and security
Yeah.
as well. Mm-hmm.
And I said that a society is meant.
Mm-hmm.
The point of society is to allow for human
Mm-hmm.
beings to pursue those things that make them human.
Right.
Because in the wild, in the natural world,
Right.
because understand the city society is a created biome,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
In the natural world, there's no need for art,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no need for science
Right.
and all that stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
thinking
Mm-hmm.
and theoretical pursuit, like hunter-gatherer societies, because there are still some hunter-gatherer
Yes.
societies in the West. From what we're able to see of them, you don't have a lot of time
Right.
for individual pursuits
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because
you're hunting and you're gathering.
you spend
Right.
most of your time hunting
Hunting
and
and
gathering,
gathering. Right.
which is takes a lot. Takes a lot,
Yes.
and not many hunts are successful, especially in these days,
Yeah.
right? Not many
Even
hunts are
back then.
successful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
you know, and so now so you spend all your time hunting and gathering,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's not like you don't have a culture and stuff like
Right.
that,
No,
but
we're not
when you
saying that.
think
Right.
about like the more, I'm like the more like you really don't like I can understand how there really wasn't a lot of written languages
Mm-hmm.
back in those days, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you really just don't have
Have
time
time.
for it.
Right.
You really don't have the
Right.
time
Time.
for it. You
Right.
don't have time to write things down, all that
Right.
stuff. That's why everything was oral.
Mm-hmm.
You got to you're on the move. You got everything.
Right.
You can't be bogged down with scrolls and
Right.
books and
Right.
stuff like that.
Right. You have to travel light.
Yeah, so you just
Right.
say had to have to remember. You just have
Right.
to remember the story.
Right.
And that's why, there could be all these giant blank spaces
Uh-huh.
in our
History.
history,
Right.
where all the people who remember the thing died.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just all forgot.
Yeah. And so now we have to come
And now
back
we
and
just have to
recreate
start
our
over
world
again.
again. Right.
Like Greek society is started
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
out of in the Dark Ages, and the
Mm-hmm.
Bronze Age collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
Where their whole society collapsed.
Right.
And they knew they had a writing system,
Right.
but they just forgot.
Forgot. Right. Gotta start all
They
over again.
forgot it, and so
Right.
they had to start
Start all
all
over
over
again.
again.
Right.
They had to relearn their own mythology,
Mm-hmm.
their language, all these things. So
Yeah.
like that, but the idea of being able to have like actual written stories
Mm-hmm.
and all these things that comes when you create a biome
Yeah.
that allows for human beings to
To
have
do
those
that.
to do
Yeah.
those things, to
Mm-hmm.
have those pursuits.
Right.
So the only function of society is to make it easier for human beings to pursue the things that they want to pursue outside of the bare necessities to be alive.
Mm-hmm. So being in I'll say in the city,
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to make life easier.
More
More
conducive
so good. Yeah. Conducive is a
to
better word.
humanity.
Right. To humanity. That you should that being in the city that it allows that it gives you the space and the freedom, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to do and to be and to become what you want,
Mm-hmm.
and what has transpired for
We can see it right
yeah,
here. We can see
right,
it right here.
right,
Like that. That's not the point of a city.
right,
Not for
right,
Socrates.
and apparently not for
The point of a city
not for a lot of
is
people for
is
centuries.
is profit.
Yep.
Is to be able to make the best city.
Mm-hmm.
Is to to have the best city where everyone is right where they need to be
Be
for the function
the
of the city in and
yeah.
of itself.
Mm-hmm. So that means that you have to have
So
a
you that's
particular
what I'm saying. So
kind of
you put
people in order to
so you put
right,
the city before the people
right.
that occupy it.
Well, we know what that.
It's
Well,
a like it's just like a fundamental like
mm-hmm,
misunderstanding of
mm-hmm,
these things. So just I guess you could say two different
yeah,
perspectives because it's not really a
mm-hmm.
misunderstanding in that
Yeah. It's
the
just
point
different.
of these
Uh huh.
things are very different,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea that you are prioritizing your city
City over
over
your
your
people.
people,
Well,
once
that's
again,
right. That's the
like
problem. Right.
that's where this disillusionment comes
Right.
from. That's where this suffering comes
Right.
from.
And this is
You're
what
not using your city
right.
because he has this point about you know gaining luxuries.
Yeah.
About now a city is going to need to grow outside of the bare
Mm-hmm.
necessities
And
of
in
what
order
it
to gain that,
needs.
particularly if you're creeping up to a neighbor's land and all of those type of things. Well, we know what that is going to entail, right?
Yeah,
If you're going to try to have more than your neighbor, well, the only way to have more than your neighbor is to take
yeah.
from your neighbor,
He
and that
keeps
causes.
he
Mm-hmm,
talks about this idea of luxury,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it says, because you want to read this book?
What paragraph?
Or you can start with true.
True. Okay, put my glasses on.
Mm-hmm.
Start with true, true, true. Oh, true. I said. I forgot that. They will have something more. Salt, of course, and olives and cheese, onions and greens to boil, such as they have in the country. And I suppose we shall give them dessert, figs and chickpeas and beans, and they would toast myrtle berries and acorns before the fire, with a drop of drink, not too much, so they would spend their days in health and peace, living to old age as you might expect, and leaving another such life to their children. He said then. But if you were founding a city of pigs, Socrates, what other fodder than this would you give them? Why, how ought they to live? Said I. In the usual manner, he said. Let them recline on couches if they don't want to be uncomfortable, and dine off tables and have the relishes and desserts which people have now. Oh, I understand, said I. The question before us is not simply how a city comes into being, but a luxurious city. That's not a bad notion, perhaps. A city of that sort might show us possibly how justice and injustice grow up in states. However, the real city seems to me what we have described, a healthy sort. But if you wish us to examine one in a high fever, there is nothing to hinder. Some people will not be satisfied with a life like this, as it seems. They will have their couches and tables and other furniture. They will have fine food too, and ointments and incense and pretty girls and cakes, all sorts of each. Then what we said at first will no longer be the bare necessaries. I mean, houses and clothes and boots. No, we must get paintings on the go and embroidery. We must provide gold and ivory and everything of that sort. Is that so? Yes. Then we must make the city larger again, I said. For that healthy city is not enough now. It must be swollen and filled with people and things which are not in cities from necessity. Hunters of all sorts, imitative artists, crowds concerned with figures and colors, crowds with music, poets with their attendants, reciters, actors, comic dancers, contractors, makers of all sorts of furniture and fittings, not forgetting those who provide the adornment of women. And besides, we shall want more servants. Don't you think we shall want boy tutors, wet nurses and nannies, tire women, barbers, cooks, and pastry cooks? And besides, we shall want swineherds. There were none in our first city because they were not wanted, but they will, yeah, but they will, he wanted in this one, be wanted in this one. And lots of all kinds of other pasturing animals will be wanted if anyone is to eat them. That is all true, isn't it? Quite so. And shan't we need physicians much more than before in such a manner of life? Yes, indeed we shall. Take the land also. What was enough to feed them then would not be enough now. It would be too small. Don't you think so? Yes, he said. Then we must take a slice of our neighbor's land if we are to have enough for grazing and plowing. And they also must take a slice of ours if they too pass the bounds of the necessary and give themselves to the boundless getting of wealth. They must be so. That must be so, Socrates, he said. The next thing is we shall go to war, Glaucon, or what will happen. I can stop there.
Yeah.
Basically, I can stop right there.
But yeah,
Because we know that in pursuit of all of that luxury,
Mhm.
that means that you are going to have to, you know,
like he says,
you're going to have to take from your neighbor. Your neighbor will have to take from
your
you.
city is going to grow outside of the bare necessities, as
Necessities.
he puts it,
Mm-hmm.
of what a city
Mm-hmm.
needs to offer people luxury,
Right.
as he calls it, right? And in accruing
Mm-hmm.
these luxuries,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to need more space,
Mm-hmm.
more land,
Mm-hmm.
for more farms, for more food to feed more people
Mm-hmm.
in your city now. And to get more lands, means you may run across another city
Mm-hmm.
who has these lands.
Mm-hmm.
Or that city, in growing itself, may run across your lands.
That's right.
Or two cities may both run across
Each
some
other, right?
neutral
Mm-hmm.
land. But either way, at some point,
We know
that
what that
means
means.
war.
Yeah.
You're going to fight it out to see who's going to be able to expand onto those lands, right? And he's just like he just
Yeah.
says all these things, and the brothers are like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
gonna need
That's
that.
true.
That
Mm-hmm.
seems right. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and you wonder where injustice
This
comes
comes
from.
in. You were functioning at first, and I mentioned about the like you used the word healthy. That's that's what your cooperation, your camaraderie, all of it made you healthy, right? But then here comes the money, right? The coinage, the money,
The luxury.
the luxury. The luxury brought forth brings about the imbalance, the power grab. Now it's we got to fight.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't fighting before, and everyone was healthy. Everyone was healthy. Now you're fighting. You're taking. You're creating problems where none even existed, and so.
And like I said before,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what a city is, a
Mm-hmm.
society is, and how it functions.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity existed for a majority of humans,
Mm-hmm.
both known and unknown.
Right.
We didn't have
Cities. Right.
cities. We didn't have cities. So
Mm-hmm.
the city in and of itself
It's a
is a
relative.
luxury.
Yeah. It's a luxury and a relatively new concept. Right.
It's a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So the idea that a healthy city
Mm-hmm.
growing outside of its needs then becomes a luxurious one,
Right.
I think it's contradictory. Well, the city in and of itself is a luxury. You existed beforehand. Evidently, you were carpenters and shoemakers and all that
Right.
stuff before you got together to be there.
It sounds empire-ish to me. It sounds like empire working here.
You know,
That's what I. That's what I view.
everybody, you all
Empire.
came together
Mm-hmm.
to make this city,
Mm-hmm.
to offer you all the luxury
Right.
of being able to work together to create a
Mm-hmm.
different, more sustainable biome
Right.
for yourself. That's the entire point.
Mm-hmm.
The city is the luxury.
Right.
That's why. So the city in and of itself is meant to be conducive
Right.
to the human condition. The
Mm-hmm.
human condition is not conducive to the city.
Right.
It's
You're
you ass backwards
right.
always.
Right. Basically.
And then you say now that your city wants to grow,
Mm-hmm.
right? To get bigger and all that stuff. Now that means war
Right.
automatically.
Mm-hmm.
There was
No conversation. Like I said, no conversation, no nothing,
talking.
no
Didn't send
talking.
out a
Right.
delegate to the city to try to negotiate some
Right.
land. Hey, look, we got this, you got that.
Hey,
Maybe
can we work this
got
out?
the land, we got the trade deals. We'll
Right.
offer you some trade deals,
Mm-hmm.
give you some land, and we all work together. Like there was none of that.
Yeah.
Immediately,
Amazingly, before you were talking to each
yeah.
other. That's what you were doing. You were talking, and like I said, the camaraderie, the cooperation. You were doing all those things. You were healthy. You were doing those things. But once, like I said, well,
But now
all of a
it's a
sudden,
city now.
it's a city now.
There's another city.
Yeah.
You forgot how to talk.
Yeah. Now it's time to bring out
Now
the
it's
big
time
swords
for war.
and the fancy chariots.
Mhm.
Because whoever have the biggest swords and the fancier chariots,
So now
Yeah.
it's like automatically. So
Mhm.
like I say, so even then, there's no mention of injustice yet.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't gotten to the injustice.
No.
You created money.
Right.
No injustice yet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You everything needs to be in its proper place. The people are meant for the city. The
Mhm.
city not meant for the people.
Mm-hmm.
No mention of injustice yet.
Yeah. See?
Now you're going to war.
Mm-hmm.
Still no
No
mention of injustice.
See, that's never mind.
You
See,
see?
that's right. You see how it feeds into it. And that's why I say it always seems as if it always feels as if the injustice is always, I would say, prevailing
Mm-hmm.
because we are leading it the wrong way. We're having the discussions the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, we don't think of, the city serving us.
Mm-hmm.
We think of what we have to do or what we are, I guess, forced to do. We need so many of this, we need this, we need that. Everyone has to be in a particular place. You have to have a particular kind of job. You may want to, I don't know, do bouquets of flowers, but instead, we need this. And so you have to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all, that's, you don't even have a life now. You're just surviving.
We all know that that's a give or take in
Of course.
both these things.
Right.
Sometimes people will be better served with a doctor than
Of
I
course.
guess another YouTuber.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you don't want to say no YouTubers,
Right.
all doctors.
Right.
And make life and try to create laws and a
Right.
culture that prioritizes people being doctors
over YouTube. Right.
So now see
that's
backwards.
yeah.
Right.
Right. And the city is supposed to, like we mentioned, supposed to be able to allow.
It's supposed to be conducive to the human spirit, not crush it.
Yeah. But we find,
But
often we find the
said,
city to be quite crushing.
Yeah, you're doing all this,
Mhm.
all this, no mention of injustice yet. You go to war, no mention of injustice yet.
Because apparently you don't see war as
because
injustice,
war
right?
isn't an injustice.
Right.
Well, so I'm like you said, just this. You
Yeah.
don't like. Do you not see what's happening
Mm-hmm.
here, Socrates? You know, and he keeps going. He talks about.
When he
Then he
gets to the
talks
education,
about creating, a dedicated warrior class.
right? Oh yeah,
But
before the
yeah, but
education,
before the
before the
education thing,
education,
he
right? Let's
talks
get to the
about
warrior class.
because the education comes up when
Yeah, that
trying
comes
to
up. Yeah,
educate
escape the
the
warrior
warrior
class, right?
class,
Uh-huh.
right? He talks about creating this dedicated warrior class
Mm-hmm.
because warriors need to be, high tempered. They
Right.
need to be high strung,
Mm-hmm.
angry and all
Right.
that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They need to have that, right? But they also need to be wise enough
Mm-hmm. To know
to
when to.
know when to, he likens it to a guard dog,
Right.
right? So when a guard dog sees someone that they don't know, they automatically got their
Right.
hind legs
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
claws out,
Right.
fangs out,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when the guard dog sees someone that he does know,
Like he just.
he's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Right.
So he's not on guard at
Right.
that moment. So the warrior needs to have the wisdom to be able to discern between enemy and ally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to be able to give just to just,
Mm-hmm.
like we talked about in book one,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that he railed against, that
Right.
he debated against
Right.
so badly. But here we go. All right, give you have to know, when to give to the ally, when to give to the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Warrior.
now,
Warrior.
yeah, so now you have a dedicated warrior
Uh-huh.
class, and then you talk about the warrior poet, right?
Right.
Because it talks about the music,
Yeah.
right? But really, what do you mean? Like, is the liberal
Yeah, the
arts,
liberal arts. Yeah,
you know,
anything dealing with the words.
anything
Anything dealing
dealing
with
with,
words.
the liberal,
Mm-hmm.
stories, the
Mm-hmm.
fables,
Right.
lessons, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
fairy tales that impart virtues and all
Right.
that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now, but like warriors don't need to be poets.
Right.
Warriors don't need to be
Right.
wise.
They need to be
They need to
warriors.
be
They
warriors.
need to fight. And
If you want a wise warrior, then that warrior won't be at war.
right.
They'll be wise enough not to be warriors.
Right. Right.
A warrior poet is a contradiction on the most fundamental level. Like I
Right.
said, you
Right.
know, the ideals of like the samurai didn't become poets until the
Till
war
war
was
was
over.
over. Right.
When the war ended and you had all these samurai around,
Right.
that's when they became artists.
Right.
That's when, Bushido and all that stuff started to
Right.
come about. When the fight was over.
Right.
When the war was on,
Right.
there was no
Yeah.
poetry.
Right.
There was no art.
That's right.
They were just warriors
Yep.
murdering
Fighting.
each other.
That's right.
And nobody liked them.
Right. And if you create this warrior class,
Mm-hmm.
that means that you're going to always create and have these conditions.
You just
right.
accepted the fact
that that's what it's going to be.
We're going to need warriors
Yeah.
to murder people.
Yeah.
No mention of injustice yet.
Yeah, none whatsoever.
Like I said, another contradiction. Warriors don't need to be poets. And
Right.
the idea of creating warrior poets is like you can't have it both ways.
Right.
Either you create a society that has poets,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you create a society that has warriors. And at the end of the day, none of these things really exist. It's just people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about the priorities that you have.
That's right. The one that you feed, the one that you give the most energy to. And
You don't have no dedicated poet class.
Right.
No dedicated,
right.
Class of poets and
right.
thinkers and learners and,
Mm-hmm.
Prioritizing that.
No.
But you do. But you'd say that you need to have poets and stuff like
right.
that.
You need to have those things.
Merely to make sure that our warriors know who to kill and who not to kill.
See what I'm saying?
And when to kill and when not to kill.
Who wants to live like
what
what is this?
No mention of injustice
yet.
Yeah. No mention of injustice yet. You're still
and here it is, you're talking and creating a society where injustice
absolute power corrupts absolute. Do you not see the corruption?
It's becoming like the fabric now. To where it's
that war is now being baked into your society.
Yeah, to where it's unnoticeable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what people do.
Like no mention of injustice.
Yeah.
No mention of injustice.
right.
But he has a whole bunch. So no mention of injustice when it comes to the warriors. When you start talking about them poets, right?
Yeah.
About what the poets need to teach
right.
our children for them to be virtuous warriors and stuff like that.
Well, of course, Okay, this go. I
Now,
told I'm
because
like
this
this
whole
go.
little part, I wrote that Plato goes off the deep end.
And I put, what is this? I put Ron this. What is this? Ron DeSantis? What is this? What is
Because
this?
now,
What is going on here?
because
What is
there's
going on
this
here?
ideal
Uh
about the Greek world and
huh.
their relationship to their gods,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That their gods were never meant to be
Right.
paragons of virtue, not like Jesus,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Their gods are meant to be more of a reflection of their society,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, evidently that wasn't widely accepted.
It
Evidently, there was, a contingent of individuals that Plato was a part of,
brings me
or
back to my
either,
college days
or
with
either
classical studies.
Plato
I told y'all.
was. I don't think Plato was the only one.
Of course, no.
I don't think Plato
Uh-uh.
was the only one.
Uh-uh.
But evidently, there was a contingent of people who believed that their gods were meant to be
That's
paragons
right.
of virtues,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching otherwise was
Me,
blasphemous
it could get you
and
right.
dangerous.
It could
That
get
you
you killed.
shouldn't teach people that Zeus was a rapist,
Right.
right? Or you shouldn't teach them
You
about the
shouldn't.
war
That's right.
amongst the
You shouldn't
gods.
say anything ugly. And I think that's the word. You shouldn't teach anything ugly about our gods.
Hmm.
And it's and in this case, I think gods are actually capitalized in this particular point. You are not to say anything or to teach anything that because if you teach it, you're gonna hurt the children.
This is
You're gonna hurt the
this
children.
is
You can't hurt. It's gonna hurt their feelings about the gods.
here we go. Because this is
Because I just want
goes
Ron
off the deep end.
DeSantis.
Now the beginning is always the chief thing in every process, especially for whatever is young and tender. For it is then most easily molded, and each takes the shape which you wish to impress upon them. Exactly. Then we shall just carelessly allow the children to hear any chance fables molded by chance persons, and to receive in their souls opinions which are generally contrary to those which we believe they ought to have when they grow up. Most certainly like. Then first, as it seems, we must set up a censorship over the fable makers, and approve any good fable they make and disapprove the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Those which are approved we will persuade the mothers and nurses to tell the children, and to mold the souls of the children by the fables even more carefully than the bodies by their hands. Most of those they tell now must be thrown away.
Sounds like maybe Ron DeSantis and,
What
and
about the
Governor
children?
Abbott and these school
The
boards,
children can't
right?
learn about
You know,
gods,
you know,
going to war.
you know.
Uranus and Kronos fighting, and
Right.
Zeus and Kronos fighting. They're going to get it in their heads that it's okay to fight.
Right.
They're going to get not. It's not the dedicated warrior class.
Right.
That's
going to be
that's going to
yeah.
do the corrupting.
Right. It's the
It's
little children.
it's the children.
It's the
It's the children.
Right.
It's not the police brutality.
Right.
It's the critical race theory.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay,
I learned about like
Socrates.
what kind of Ron DeSantis going up to the school boy. You
And then he
can't
goes
teach
off.
this.
Yeah.
What is this
And then he goes off on this whole
tangent? Right.
about now they talk about passing laws.
Yeah.
We need to have laws that ban this stuff.
Sounds
Are
familiar?
you like what in the world?
Yeah.
Plato
Yes.
had Socrates the question everything person.
Right.
Now
Banning.
I'm thinking this is Plato. I don't know
It could be. I don't know.
It could be Socrates. I don't know any of these people.
Right.
This is also a translation, so it could be
Right. It
another
could be
translation.
right.
But you're telling me the free thinking, question everything
Yeah,
philosophers.
y'all great. That's right. Y'all great
like,
philosophers, right?
We need to censor stories,
right.
To
We
make sure
education,
that children don't learn about the bad stuff that our God do. That our gods are only actually capable of good.
Right.
That they're not capable of all. They're capable of only good.
Right.
And all the bad things.
And that yeah, because I think because I think I had mentioned how God is the cause of good things, not of all things. I think that's the
I think that's literally what he said.
Yeah, that's why I wrote it down.
Yeah.
I literally wrote it down. That God is the cause of good things, not of all things. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm like,
okay. Okay.
No mention
right.
of injustice yet.
Right.
You haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
Still, everything's just so far.
Mm-hmm.
right? Then and like he goes like he continues down this whole tangent
Mhm.
of like they can only learn so much and only
Uh-huh.
teach. You have to change the stories and stuff like that. And
Right.
I think you know,
And I'm gonna tell you why. Because he says that we don't know what is the truth about ancient things. And so we make it useful.
hmm
Okay.
so now you're
That's
weaponizing
right.
your history.
Yes.
Now instead of
Right.
people, like I said, instead of your city being in service to
Hmm.
your people's in service of your city.
And they
Instead
have
of your stories and being your people, creating
right.
stories to impart wisdom however they see fit.
Right.
Now they can only say only so much
Yeah,
about a
because
particular thing,
right.
all in service to the maintenance
That's
of the
right. It
city.
has to be useful.
It has to be
That's
useful.
right. I'm like, I'm like, man.
Like, do you, no mention of
Of justice,
injustice
right?
yet.
Right.
And so he goes on this whole tangent, and Edamantos
Hmm.
asks him, he's like, well, how are we even going to, how do you even enforce something like that?
That's
How do you
right.
even do something like that?
Right.
And
Here we go.
this is what Socrates,
Yeah.
this is what Plato had Socrates
You
say.
say it.
All
That's
right.
right. Hmm.
My dear Edamantos, we are not poets, just now, you and I, but founders of a city. And founders ought to know the shapes in which the poets ought to make their fables. And if the poets make them different, the founders must not put up with it, but they have not to make fables themselves. Quite right, but this very thing, the shapes of tales of gods, what would they be? Something like this: the character of the god that must always be described, no doubt, whether the poetry be epic or lyric or tragic, yes, that
Hmm.
is true. And is not a god good in reality? And the fable must agree with that, of course. Again, nothing good is harmful, is it?
Yep. All right.
I think
That's
not.
right.
Can what is not harmful do harm? Or dare not? Can what does no harm do evil? Never. And what does no evil could not be the cause of anything evil. How could it? Very well. The good is serviceable? Yes. The cause of well being, then? Yes. Then the good is cause not of all things, but of those that are well, and not cause of those that are evil. By all means. It follows, then, said I, that God, since he is good, will not be cause of all things, as most say, but cause of a few things to mankind, and of many no cause. For the goods are much fewer for us than the evils. And of the good things, God and no other must be described as the cause. But of the evil things, we must look for many different causes, only not God. So this is the same person
Uh-huh.
who early on
Hmm.
just said
Right.
in not in Minnow,
Hmm.
it says that can you do harm
Right.
in your pursuit of justice?
Hmm.
Right? Could the application of justice
Right.
make just men
Right.
unjust? So that was approaching something called we like to call nuance,
Right.
right? That the right
Yeah.
thing isn't always what's best in
Best.
every
Right.
situation,
Hmm.
and if it's not what's best, then is it really
Justice.
justice?
Right.
That's a nuanced conversation.
Yeah. But here,
But all that seems to go out the window.
window. Right. But here, hold up now.
All that seems to go out the window. Now
Right.
there is no room. There is
No.
no nuance. There is no
Hmm.
nothing. God is good.
Yeah.
God is the cause of all that is good. And if you say otherwise, then we as the founders,
Right. Of
right?
the
Because now the
city. Right.
founders
Right.
have the power now.
That's right.
We as the founders must enforce that and enforce it upon you, the poet, to write what it is that we want you to write.
Yeah.
And the mothers must only say those things that we
Right.
want them to say. Like
Does this sound? This sounds so familiar.
it
That
sounds
sounds.
very, very 1984ish.
Yes.
No, no, not 1984. I would say
Shit.
Brave New World.
Yeah.
Weaponize happiness.
Well, that's what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, a lot, look at the current affairs of this country. We see how, we want certain things to be, laid out to our children. And if And if it's not said or taught this particular way, well, there is a problem. Okay? There's a reason why, Renee, you cannot teach Kendrick, right? You cannot teach Tim O'Brien. And how dare you have your students to read Asala Shakur? I mean, I've lost a couple of jobs because of those reasons, right? So that's what you see happening. That's happening now. You have folk who, like you said, woke supremacy is worse than white supremacy. That's what O'Rourke said. Right? And how dare you teach? George Washington was a great president. We don't have to talk about the fact that he.
What type of people are we creating if we say otherwise?
Yeah. Right.
I'll tell you the type that riot,
right,
and protest.
That's right.
Do all this stuff.
Right.
No, see, if they would have just learned that George Washington was only good,
right,
and that our founding fathers did only good,
mm-hmm.
then there wouldn't be any problems.
Yeah, right.
And I tell you what, if you teach all these black people,
right,
with their woke agenda,
right,
and you're creating more problems because that's actually racist.
Yeah, that's racist.
That's actually racist.
Right. Right.
So now Homer and Hesiod,
right,
and all the great poets,
yes,
who
they had a problem,
who
right?
rediscovered a language.
That's right. They had a problem.
And
not the
wrote
warriors,
down these stories.
Right.
Wrote down these stories.
Mm-hmm.
And codified a mythology that helped to create one of the greatest cultures in human history.
Mm-hmm.
They
are the problem.
They're the problem.
That's right.
They shouldn't have been teaching them.
That's right.
You can't teach Homer.
Right.
You can't teach the Iliad to the children.
Right. How dare you?
What would they think?
Right.
If they might get it in their head that killing is okay. It's not the dedicated warrior class.
Right. Yeah. Because see, they need all that wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. See, they need that because they have to be able to judge whether or not you're an enemy or an ally.
When to kill and when not to kill.
Yeah. But the children,
So that's pretty much how book 2 ends. It ends with them saying that we're going to pass laws,
right,
that says that you can't teach this stuff to our children.
Florida.
That's
Texas.
literally what they say.
Florida, Texas.
Literally, it says, when a poet speaks like this of the gods, we shall be angry, and we will refuse him a chorus. We will not allow schoolmasters to use his sayings in educating the young, if our guardians are to be pious and themselves divine, as far as human beings can possibly be. Most certainly, he said, I grant you these 2 shapes, and I would use these as laws. That is the last sentence of book 2.
Mm-hmm. Welcome to America. That's what you have happening.
See, we're not the first people to point this out.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. you have the Russian artists, your Dostoevskys, and Tolstoys.
Yeah.
Right? Even your, George Washingtons and Thomas Jeffersons. Right? Who created things in the way, who created ideals like they themselves didn't live up to in their own words, in their own time.
Right.
They themselves acknowledged the hypocrisy. And so has a lot of people who has, read this, be like, there seems to be something wrong here.
Yeah. Oh, great philosophers.
There seems to be something wrong here.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, you introduce money, not to underpin cooperation, but to profit from it.
Mm-hmm.
You use money to facilitate cooperation, not the mutual need.
Mm-hmm.
No injustice there.
Right.
No, there's no injustice there.
Right.
All right. Everybody must be put in their place.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody must be taught to be in those particular places.
Right. Because that's in service of the city.
No injustice there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
No injustice.
Right.
Now we're going to need warriors. And our warriors are going to need to know when to fight and when not to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're going to have to know, when to be warriors and when to be poets.
Right.
No injustice there.
Mm-hmm. And then,
our children
right.
and the people can no longer hear about
The ugly
the
or the right.
ugliness of our gods. And if they do hear it, it has to be in hush, whispered tones
Hmm.
in at the end of grand rituals for mystery cults.
Right.
Only then can
Right.
they know that Zeus and Kronos didn't get along.
Right.
Right?
Hmm.
And even then,
Right.
even then, and if the poets, you know, want to create things that run contrary to the central messaging of the city, then they must be dealt with to the fullest extent of the law.
Hmm.
No injustice there.
Oh, that's right. That 1984 Brave New World.
So that you use weaponized pleasure,
Uh huh.
weaponized happiness.
Hmm.
And this is more Brave New World than it is
Yeah.
1984.
Hmm.
You giving everybody the soma and everybody that did the pleasure drug.
Right.
Everybody's going to be happy and
Hmm.
virtuous in my city.
Right.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, Socrates.
Right. So yeah,
So yeah,
that's book two.
that's book two, and I'm sure it's going to get a lot better as we go
Well,
along.
of course.
There are 10 books here,
Yeah.
and so
So
yeah, if you have if
if
you
you have
have
any
any questions or
questions,
comments, leave them in the comments. And once again, thank you for hearing us out.
thank you so much.